In the spirit of Valentine's Day, I like to cook a nice romantic dinner. Now for me, what's dinner without dessert? And you may be asking yourself, what options do I really have being plant-based? Well, today I'm going to show you not only how to make a chocolate souffle, but we're going to do it with bean water. That's right. If you're intrigued, grab these ingredients right over here, and I'll meet you in the kitchen. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Mike the Herbivore. Now you might be asking yourself, Mike, what do you mean by bean water? Well, today we're going to be using an egg substitute known as Aquafaba. What is Aquafaba exactly? Well, it's a combination of two Latin words, aqua meaning water and faba meaning beans. It quite literally is the water from beans. Now for this particular recipe, I'm going to be using garbanzo beans, also known as chickpeas. It's just a personal preference of mine for this particular recipe, but really any water from any can of beans will totally suffice. I just, in my personal experience, find that garbanzo beans whip up a little bit faster and a little bit easier. And what we're going to be doing is taking that aquafaba and whipping it into a meringue. All you're going to do is open up a can of beans and drain the water. We're going to be using a half cup for this recipe, but hang on to the rest of it because there's a chance, and by chance I think you know that it's actually going to happen, that we'll be using these garbanzo beans for a different recipe at a later date. Naturally, your first step is going to be to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Boom. Another prep thing that we need to do is get our ramekins buttered. Now, this is a trick that I learned from my grandmother a while ago. When you're using sticks of butter, what I typically will do is just cut where I need to get the amount that I need. That means I have this wrapper that usually will go right into the trash. However, if I'm going to be buttering something ahead of time, I'm going to take this wrapper and just run it along the inside of my dish or my container or whatever I might be, because that is going to give me that lightly greased consistency that I need in order to get my dish prepared. Really, honestly, it's just sort of a way to find a use for this paper without having to use more butter and also kind of cleaning it up just a little bit before you throw it into the trash. And there you go, guys. Super easy way to prep ramekins. Lightly butter a dish using the wrapper. Easy, easy, quick little thing. Now that the oven is being preheated, we are going to take a small bowl and we're going to sift together some of our dry ingredients. What I like to use is a wire mesh strainer. This helps me get all of the little clumps out of my product and makes it a lot easier for me to whisk things together. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to add my 6 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of cacao powder. Now you can use an unsweet baking cocoa if you'd prefer, though I do recommend you try to get something with dark chocolate, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and about 1/8 teaspoon of sea salt. Just get those ingredients to sift together. See all those clumps that I get? This is common with my cacao powder. It may just be the brand that I have. I don't know if this is a problem everyone has. So I just use my little whisk and push those pieces through so that I don't have to worry so much about trying to mix them by hand, because it'll become a little bit difficult for me to do that with this whisk. I'm gonna whisk this all together. You just want this to be a nice even consistency, because when you're baking, you don't want to overmix anything. If you overmix it, then that's going to cause it to get a little too dense. And this is a souffle that we're making, so we need it to be light and fluffy. Once you've got all those things whisked together, you're going to take this bowl, set it aside. The next thing we're going to need is melted chocolate. So for that, I'm going to take 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup of our plant-based butter, and I'm going to be adding a 1/4 cup of our plant-based chocolate chips. Now these don't specifically have to be chocolate chips, as long as it's non-dairy, that's what we're going for here. So I'm just going to add those to this. Now if you have a double boiler, you can do this on the stove and melt this down. I personally do not, and I feel like most of you don't either. So what I'm going to do is put this in the microwave at 15-second intervals. And I'm going to stir it in between each interval to get everything nice and melted. I'm not trying to cook the butter, I just want everything to melt together. So let me go ahead and do that. And there you have it, melted chocolate. So we're going to take this, and guess what? Set it aside. All right, now that we've got the other 2 ingredients done, it's time for the piece de resistance, the main event, the bean water. The aquafaba. We're going to take a measuring cup and we're going to take the can of beans that I opened, and all we're going to do is measure out 1/2 cup. Now you want to be careful when you're pouring this out, because you don't want any chunks of the actual bean inside your aquafaba. All you want is the water. You can see by the liquid in here, it's a little more on the viscous side. I think a lot of reasons why people gravitate towards garbanzo bean water as opposed to other bean water is that this has the most similar look to like egg whites or something along those lines. So it's a little bit easier, I guess, for people to fathom this being a substitute. If you'd like to know more about Aquafaba in its entirety, shoot me a message in the comments and I'll be sure to make a video explaining the science behind how all of this works. In the meantime, let's take this half cup, pour it in our mixing bowl, and now we need to take this and turn it into a meringue. You may be asking yourself, how do we turn this into a meringue? Well, it's actually relatively easy. All we're going to do is grab our hand mixer and whip this for about 10 minutes, depending on how strong your mixer is. Now, for those of you that have whisk attachments to your hand mixer, I highly recommend that you use those. I don't for mine, so I'm just going to use regular ones. And for those of you that have stand mixers, you can actually use the whisk attachment on that and make this your very first step as opposed to the final step like we've done here, so that you can have it mixing the entire time while you're prepping all your other ingredients. So since this is going to take a little bit of time, I figured I might as well tell you a little bit of a story about myself while we do this. So I'm going to grab my hand mixer and let's get to going. So see, I was actually born in Ohio. And my grandparents had a farm, so you can imagine why I was... Now, once you get everything to this sort of whipped consistency, that's when you want to start adding your powdered sugar. Now, I already know from my own personal taste that I use a full 4 tablespoons or 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. That's because my cacao powder is really dark and very bitter, so I want a little bit more of that sweetness in it. You can adjust your sweetness depending on your own taste. If you didn't use dark chocolate when you were melting the chocolate, or you didn't use a dark chocolate cocoa powder, you might want to use a little less of the powdered sugar in yours. I'm just going to go ahead and dump all of mine in, and then we're going to continue mixing. So by the time I got to school, you could imagine. So then I discovered theater. And high school was not easy. And that was when I had my first real kiss. You can imagine it wasn't until college that I finally accepted that I was, oh cool, we're almost done. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, and when you see that this starts to form little peaks, you see how that's forming peaks there? Then that means that we've reached the meringue type consistency. And believe it or not, kids, this came from bean water. Now we're going to start combining all of our ingredients together. I'm going to switch camera angles so you guys can see a little bit better what I'm doing. We have all 3 elements now of our souffle. The final ingredient that we need to add is our vanilla extract, and we're going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract and add that to our chocolate now that it's had a chance to cool. I'm just going to add that in and give that a quick little stir. We're going to start combining these things in a specific order. So step number 1 is we're going to take our meringue and we're going to add the chocolate to that. Now what you want to do is just scoop this out, add it into our meringue. You can see we've got nice viscosity there because this chocolate's sitting on top. That's a good sign. Scoop all that out, and you're gently going to fold all of this together. Now the goal here is to get everything to combine without getting the meringue too flat. Then now that we've got that, we're going to add the flour. Now this is going to flatten a little bit because it's adding obviously a little more denseness of a consistency to the batter. That's okay. We don't mind. And again, you want to try to get this mixed without it getting too flat. And that's it, kids. Now we're going to transfer this batter into our prepared ramekins. All we're going to do is take half of our batter and put it inside one of our ramekins here, and the other half in the other. There you go. Chocolate souffle for 2. So we're going to pop those into the oven. And we are going to set that timer. Depending on how your oven cooks, you may be between 20 and 25 minutes. Mine seems to work perfectly at 22, so that's what I'm going to set it for. And now, since we're trying to do something romantic, let's do those dishes. Now when your timer goes off, turn on the oven light and double check them while they're still inside before you open the door. You want to make sure that the centers look like they've risen fully, otherwise if you open up the door and check on them, they'll flatten and they will not re-rise. So you want to double check that before you open the door. So ours look pretty good. Let's get them out of the oven. And look at how beautiful and sexy those are. Delicious. Now we wait for them to cool, and you can garnish them however you'd prefer. I like a little dusting of powdered sugar, but remember, you are making these for someone else, so I recommend you do what their favorite is. And there you have it, everybody. Soufflé for two using bean juice. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and please feel free to share this with anybody who you think might want to know how to make a nice romantic dessert. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, be good to yourself, be good to others, be kind to the animals, and go eat a plant. I love you all. Bye.